Hello, hello. Can everyone hear me? Hello. Awesome. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Wow. My name's Gordon, and I'll be your host. For CS Club's roasting our first year resumes event, we've got 5 amazing upper years students here with us today, and each of them will be sharing with us their very first resume that they made way back in first year and roasting the hell out of them. Hopefully everyone leaves here today with some new tips and insight on how to build a great resume, and hopefully we'll share some laughs along the way. Throughout the event, we'll be checking the Twitch chat for questions and comments, so please make sure you're dropping the occasional PogChamp to let us know that you're enjoying yourselves. At the end of each speaker, we'll select a few questions picked from the chat to answer. Then at the end of the event, we'll have an open floor Q&A where you can ask even more questions. So without further ado, let's introduce our speakers. First up, we've got Steven Edwards, a third-year CS student from Toronto. He's really excited to share with us his resume from first year. He's a huge music fanatic and loves talking about and producing music, so ask him any questions about that. Welcome, Steven.
Thank you, Gordon. I'm happy to be here. And so happy to be a part of this. It's a great opportunity for first years, I know, and honestly, anyone in tech, I know I would have been thrilled to have such an opportunity. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, hopefully without any problems, and jump right into it. So this here is my first year resume. And the first thing I want to point your attention to is the Google Docs resume template right at the top of the list here. Spearmint, not bad. I clearly thought so in first year, so I copied a template of that, started filling it in, and ended up with this beauty. Now, the first thing you'll hear from a lot of employers is make yourself stand out. If I went to Google Docs and grabbed literally the first thing on there, I probably am not going to accomplish that. So I would advise that you don't use the first template you find, because it'll probably be something fairly popular, which, I mean, it makes sense why people are using it, because if it's popular, it looks good, but you want to stand out more so than look the part, right? And really showcase who you are as a person. So the first thing I kind of want to go over is just a high level layout. First thing you may notice, at least I'm kind of drawn to this, is there's a whole lot of white space. Now, while that's good for not creating a lot of clutter, it's definitely not using the whole page well. And it's something I kind of wish I had gone through and found the content to fill the page, because in first year, it was just kind of like, fill as much as you can with not really a lot of substance. So we're going to help you out actually later in the stream and give you some resources to maybe help you build up those set of skills to get some more substance to fill out that white space. The next thing I want to draw your attention to is my work experience is smack dab in the middle. And typically when you're reading a document, you quickly scan at the top, scan at the bottom, and then go back and fill everything else in as you go. So this will probably be one of the last things a lot of recruiters will get to and see. But work experience is probably something that you want to prioritize the most, if not just under like creative projects or side projects. So that's something I probably would have told myself to avoid. The next thing I want to sort of bring your attention to is language choice. So I could say, you know, I'm a pretty good programmer, or I could say I'm a terrific programmer and, you know, my skills are good because of these reasons, these concrete reasons with numbers to back them up. So you want to be sort of particular about how you choose language because it really reflects sort of how you're presenting yourself. So a specific example here is I say I'm well acquainted with Python. Now, while that may be true that I'm not an expert in it, you don't need to say how good you are at a specific skill because you should be able to learn it to a high degree, even if you're just simply acquainted with it. So don't be afraid to really boost yourself on resumes. Use language that sells yourself in a really good light. Also here you can see familiar rather than proficient or something better than familiar. And like I said, you want to use like concrete numbers where possible. The only real number I have here, apart from years, is my 3x3 Rubik's Cube not record, far from world record, but personal best as 10 seconds. Now, although that is a fun fact, and it actually did help land my first job, there should be more numbers here. And that's kind of something I want to segue into the next part. As I kind of started off mentioning, you want to brand yourself as an individual, someone unique with unique traits that you can offer. Obviously, you need to be good at certain technologies that are standard in the field, but you are you, and you're the only person who's you, and you do that best. So write some interesting stuff about yourself, write things that you're proud of, because often they'll come up as talking points in interviews. And if anything, those should be the easiest questions you have because they're things you're interested in. So definitely put something that makes you stand out. These are all suggestions. You can take them as you will, but my recommendation, you put something that makes this resume scream you. So then you can go on to talk about it in your interview, which you will definitely land. So the last thing I want to do is switch over to my current resume. It's something that I created completely by hand. I didn't use any templates. It was an exercise in design and using HTML and CSS. So here it is. The first thing I want to point out are the sort of better use of white space. You'll see the right side of the page is pretty much completely filled there without being cluttered. Next thing, I have a few concrete numbers in here, percentages, some figures to kind of back up the things that I've done and the accomplishments I'm proud of. And the final thing, I've got my order kind of sorted out. I have experience, projects, and then everyone, if you're applying through Waterloo Works in particular, people know your education is going to be most likely from UW. So you can put that fairly low. I'm also using some iconography here at the top, which is kind of a nice modern touch. So that's everything I think I wanted to cover. I'm going to turn it over to Gordon for some questions maybe that popped up in chat.
Awesome. Great stuff, Stephen. We have one question so far from Trolls Buddy.
Awesome.
And they would like to know what exactly you would change about your first year resume. I know you mentioned some specific things that you felt like could be improved, but looking at this right now, like what are maybe top 2 or 3 things that you think you really could fix?
Right. Thanks for the question. That gives me a great opportunity to kind of wrap up and summarize. So the biggest thing I would change the order in which I put things to put work experience and project experience closer to the top, because that is the most important for a tech resume for the most part. I would also make better use of white space. But first and foremost, I would do something that makes me stand out, something that says, this is me, and you'll be lucky to have me rather than, some other person who also has the same maybe hard skills. This is like what I bring to the table as an individual. So I hope that answers your question, Trolls. Thanks for asking.
One more question from ABABABBB. They'd like to know what if they don't have any work experience. So how should they maybe bolster the resume, or how should they try formatting the resume if they don't have that much work experience coming into it?
Totally, a great question. I think the first thing, which it may be not the thing you want to hear, but it's the thing I'd recommend, is try and take it under your own initiative to volunteer, because no one needs to hire you to do that. Hopefully no one's denying you from volunteer experiences. Second, seek out sort of learning opportunities to work on your own projects, because no one's going to stop you from building things you're interested in and you enjoy. So if you only have projects instead of work experience, I know that could honestly take you a pretty far way for a first co-op job in tech. Apart from that, yeah, you may just need to get crafty with the way you lay things out. Like this, obviously, like I had no tech experience in first year, and this kind of speaks to that. But I did get a job. It's not impossible. Like these things aren't going to be deal breakers. They're just, if you put in the time to kind of build up some of that experience, it will help. Yeah. So to summarize that, sort of seek out opportunities that you know you can kind of get content to add to your resume through your own kind of volition and learning. Yeah, hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that was really great. Okay, and one last final question that just got popped in the chat from Ray M10111. They say that they can't fit all their experiences and projects into their resume. So what would you recommend
Right,
that they
that's a
do?
really good question. There's sort of the crunching down from 2 pages to 1 page is another one of like the big challenges when building a first year resume. If you have a lot of experience in projects, the first thing I'd recommend is go through, see what's saying the same thing twice, because if it's saying the same thing twice, you probably only need one instance of that on your resume. So if you have 2 side projects that are RESTful APIs in some web framework, you can just put one of them and then they can go and seek out other projects that you've done if they're curious. With regards to actual work experience, similar things. Find experiences that really look into the meaning behind why you're putting certain points on a resume. See what skill it's conveying, maybe what attribute you're kind of showing off with that, and see if you're duplicating that anywhere. Apart from that, yeah, just try and lay out, like organize your white space better, maybe use a sidebar, something to just kind of use the whole page without cluttering it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephen. That was really great. We're going to move on to our next speaker now. Next up, we have Celine Lee. So she's in 4 ACS, and fun fact, she's actually got a paparazzi problem. She was caught on camera multiple times by Google Maps. So you can find out where they caught her there. Let us know. Take it away, Celine.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Celine. I'm in my 4A term of CS. I'm actually doing the HDI option, which is pretty cool. As for my past co-ops, I've had a mix of both design and dev co-ops. About half have been design and then half have been like engineering. And then I've also worked at a couple like different companies, including nonprofits and startups. So I'll share my screen with you. Okay. Can everyone see this? Awesome. Okay. So I'll just make this a little bit bigger. So this is my first year resume. Fun fact, I actually looked at the last time I edited this and it was like January 13th, 2017, which for context was in like my second week of 1B. So it's been a while since I looked at it, but I can see how this was like not the best. I think I actually made this for PD to submit for the assignment. So, yeah, I'll just kind of get into it. The first thing that you might notice is that this is more than 1 page long, which is a really big no-no because recruiters will only look at your resume for like max like about 6 seconds on average, and then like if they like what they see, they'll keep reading. But you want to try to get their attention as little time as possible. So that means making it super scannable and really easy to read. And if it's multiple pages, obviously not doing that. So that's like the first thing right off the bat. And then also you'll see that this resume is it's Word and not a PDF. And this can be a problem, especially if you have fonts on your resume that aren't installed on the reader's computer. So you want to make sure that the format of your file is like a PDF or something like that. Make sure it's not like a PNG either, because it won't be ATS parsable. So make sure it's a PDF format. Next, the third thing that comes kind of like really blatant to me is white space. And I think Stephen kind of mentioned this, but white space is good, but too much white space doesn't allow you to write as much as you should. So I kind of went a little bit overboard with my margins, especially like at this like header thing. It's kind of weird. I don't know why I spent so much like space on this, but if I could do it again, I would kind of remove that part or change it up. Next up, I have fonts. So this font, I thought it was like super trendy and cool, but in the long run, it's kind of like narrow. So it's a little bit hard to read. So think about the recruiter's perspective. So they're going through like maybe hundreds of resumes, and if it's gonna be like really annoying or difficult to read, they're not gonna read your resume. So make sure the fonts you choose are super legible and really easy to read and scan. That's like the overall, and then I'll kind of dive into each of the sections. So here is my header. I'm not sure why I put my like year and term, because if I wasn't going to be this information probably isn't helpful to a recruiter. So that's a consideration you might want to consider for your own resume. I also have my student number on this for some reason, which you don't really need from what I understand. Yeah, and I also put my address, which they don't need to know your address. Just yeah. Next, here I have a skill summary. And so, okay, when I made this resume, I wasn't really sure what kind of job I wanted. I just wanted a job. And I think that was my biggest like thing wrong with my resume. It wasn't really tailored to any kind of job. So even if you don't have particular like dev or like design or PM experience, for example, make sure you're trying to tailor your resume as much as you can and not making it like seem like you're jack of all trades, because that's probably not what they want in a role. So make sure you try to tailor your resume as much as you can when you're submitting it for internships and stuff. Yeah. And then next up, you can see my education section, which is, I don't know why it's so high. Like I submitted this to Waterloo Works, I think, maybe after I cleaned it up a little, but there's no reason why your education should be this high. I think it kind of shows that you don't have much else to show other than like the brand name of your school, which like Waterloo is a good school, but it doesn't need to be this high up on your resume because everyone else on Waterloo Works will be from Waterloo. I also have my high school for some reason. That's not necessary. Next, I have my volunteer experience, and kind of like what Stephen was saying, volunteer experience is really great to have, especially if you don't have real work experience like I did not. But yeah, a lot of these points where like I did this and that, and I didn't really contextualize it. And this was kind of like going back to when I was volunteering, I wasn't really recording the impact I was having on how I was volunteering. So if I could go back to like my high school days, I would kind of keep record of how my contributions impacted the organization I was volunteering at, so I can better contextualize the importance of what I did and what I contributed to the organizations that I did. So for instance, a way that I could have improved this was, let's say, for my board of directors student voice and communication committee, one of my roles was to promote like school events. And I think a metric I could have recorded while I was volunteering was like how much did attendance increase with me taking on like a marketing role and like promotional stuff. So make sure that you're having fun at your volunteering roles, obviously, but try to record your impact on the things that you worked on as much as you can so that you can contextualize the importance of your contributions. Here I have participant in Microsoft Digi Girls Day, which was actually a really cool experience. But like the way I worded it here, it kind of sounds like I'm throwing shade at Microsoft because it says like learned about the lack of female representation in technology careers at Microsoft's initiative, which is, I don't know, I feel like that's kind of like the meaning could be like not really clear. So I would say to get your resume read by a bunch of different people, get a lot of eyes on it because they'll probably be able to pick up things that you missed. And this was something that I obviously missed when I was in first year, like how it could be like kind of throwing shade at them. Like not in a obvious way, but it could come off as that. So just another consideration. And then down here, I have my awards and achievements section, which I think I did a pretty good job at explaining what awards I got and like what I got them for. But a lot of these, like, I don't think they were necessary. Like Ontario Scholar, I feel like everyone gets that. So maybe removing that and prioritizing like a different award, for example, like the Comtech award, like not everyone gets that, which is pretty cool. So I feel like I should have prioritized that maybe a little bit higher. And then, sorry, I have my notes pulled up beside. And then here I have my hobbies and interests section, which I think is important, but not like that important. So if I could redo this, I'd make this smaller, or like maybe off to the side. And then also I kind of have like a typo here. It says interested in learning about user interfaces and user design. Like, what is user design? I probably want to write user experience design. So I think that's it in terms of my roast. Any questions? Or are we saving questions to the end?
That was really great, Celine. We're trying to save maybe the more general questions until the end, but I'll still ask you like one or two questions now, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So looking at this now, you have 2 pages, lots of information. Would you reorder your resume in terms of like moving different sections above or below?
Yeah, so I think in terms of if I could, or if I had to redo this, and like the way I do it now, it's like the header, which is like a lot smaller, and then I usually do like work experience, extracurricular, and then education. I just took out award section completely, because a lot of these awards I got were in high school, and that was kind of a long time ago now, so they're not as important anymore.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for that roast. That was great. And from here, we'll just move on to our next speaker, introducing Nikhil. He's a 3B SE student, and recently, in pre-COVID times, he did a work term in Japan, and he had a really great experience there. So if you have any questions about working abroad, make sure to ask him. The floor is yours, Nikhil.
Hello, everyone. I'll just share my screen. Stop. Excellent. Okay. And yeah, I just kind of wrote down some notes in Notion. So if you want to, feel free to reach out if you want a record of them. I have both my resumes, like pre-roast resume that I made in first year, 1B, like just from my tuition, and I got roasted very hard. And this is the final resume that I submitted for jobs. So I recommend everyone do that for their own resumes as well. To start out, the first thing I noticed is like, holy, that header is really something. So make sure, I guess, like, I think the intent there is like, you can get noticed among like all the other resumes that are out there. But maybe there's like better ways to get that across, like having some gradient on your color or some color, like, but that could be just being like mindful of like, that is a very like sharp, could be a sharp like response, like could elicit some sharp response from someone. The other thing is like, oh, okay, I see there's like 2 columns and there's 2 pages. That's a big no-no. No one has time to look through 2 pages of your life. They're gonna try to scroll through it 10 seconds maybe. So you got to really cut down on from your 2 pages, whatever else you got going on, to 1 column, 1 page. And the reason for that is like, they need to be able to skim through your life chronologically. And you need to be able to like determine like, this is the first thing that I want you to see. This is the second thing I want you to see. And you need to make the decision rather than like worrying about like, will they look here, will they look there? So just put yourself in their shoes. They have limited time. What do you really want them to see? No one cares. I did Hack the Valley too. I also found it in Career Hacks. No one gives a shit. Like, they want to hire me as a software developer. Like, I gotta put myself in their shoes really a lot more. Okay, like, come on. First year mine self is tisk. But language tools. So I mentioned some JavaScript here, which is important. I think you should mention skills, but they really should be a succinct version of your project experience. And here you will notice I have 0 experience that I mentioned for my technical skills. So I don't know where I was getting this. I think I was just like, again, trying to put something there, make a generalist resume. But this should really be your skill section, be a really succinct summary of your project section. If you ever were to take a look at it, you should be able to back up your JavaScript experience, C experience, all that stuff. Okay, what else? Okay, there's a slight point of like handle logistics is like, there's like honestly no point in having a sentence that weak. Like, if you cannot think of an extra word, get rid of it. Everything should be very substantiated with numbers. This kind of point does decent job at it, like 500%. Like, there's some numbers, there's some impact there. but go for a strong verb or not have the sentence at all. Um, the one I think like Celine also mentioned this, like 1A software engineering, like you really want them to know you're in 1A, or you just want them to judge you by like, okay, this is my resume, this is my experience. If you think I'm like decent, please interview me, and we'll go from there. Um, okay, the second page is also something that Celine mentioned, so a lot of like repeat content here, but hopefully that really goes in your head. Is like all these awards, like who are you making the resume for? Like, are you just trying to make yourself feel good, or are you trying to get a job? No one cares. Like no one cares that you got like you did really well in the chemistry contest in high school. Like, showcase like what it is that you provide for the job. And there, I have a cute heart here. So I do care. I think that matters. Like showing some personality to your resume matters. This might be pushing it, might not be pushing it. I'll show you what my resume looked at the end. This is a lot though. Like holy shit. No one has that many interests. Like cut it down. So this is what my resume looked like at the end when I submitted. There's again a lot of things that I could change with it, but here's like just want to highlight some positives. Like the contact information is like very succinctly put up. I still went with the header at that time. Just again, I don't know, it seemed okay at the time. I still kind of like it. It really depends on you. I kept the profile. Like there's a lot of like subjective decisions that I made that are very controversial here, like the big header with color. The profile is like you could probably get rid of it. You don't need it, but I wanted to showcase some personality, like the heart for interest rather than taking interest. It's all your decision, but try to have some personality if you can through it in a tasteful manner. Like heart, maybe some tasteful. Like this is not very tasteful anymore in my mind. Your education, yeah, I think some people highlight like it can be at the bottom, but if you're applying externally, keep it at the top. Like University of Waterloo is a good brand. Be proud of it. You can put it at the top. It should definitely get eyeballs. So, okay, I added a lot of projects. So this was not something that existed before, and now there's actual like substance to like the skill section. They can look at it. And another thing I want to highlight is like the projects. Like what was the impact of the project? Oh, I want this something you know like substantiate the project. Like maybe you have some users. Like it's like that would be. I think that would be very. That would really help you stand out from other first years. I added some experience. Like this is honestly kind of useless, but just to show maybe some leadership skills, like some involvement, like I care about community, XYZ. You can have use that as a perfection to showcase that. That will be it for my end. But yeah, I'm very happy to answer questions here and also in like feel free to reach out on Facebook. I think Gordon is monitoring the chat, so if he doesn't ask you your question, I'll hate me. I'll go to him. But yeah, I'm happy to take questions in DM or whatsoever.
Awesome, that was really
Back to you,
great,
Gordon.
Nikhil. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so we have a question from Jasmine Cabal, who's wondering, where did you get the icons that you use? Because they thought that was really nice, the icons that you're using. So like, did you find them online or where?
Sure, yeah, thank you. I found them in the Noun project. Noun project has some really good icons. Yeah, I think I kind of cheated though because I downloaded them for free and then I would edit them. I would edit the author out of it. If you can support them, but I was broke in first year, so I did not support them. I downloaded for free and edited the name out. Yeah.
Okay, cool, awesome, yeah. Just moving forward, I'll reiterate this again. We'll just be focusing on all like specific questions per speaker, and then at the end we'll have a general Q&A where we'll answer the majority of the other questions. Cool, awesome. So that concludes session with Nikhil. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Monica. So she's a 4B CS student, and her fun fact is that she's actually lived in 4 different countries for the past 2 years. She's got lots of experience in all fields of development, PM, data engineering, you name it. So don't be shy to ask her any questions you have. Take it away, Monica.
Sweet. Hi, everyone. I'm Monica. As Gordon said, I'm in 4B CS. That makes me feel like such a boomer. Oh, man. But I wasn't always in strictly CS. I started off the University of Waterloo as a CS BBA student. So that's the double degree program with Laurier. So I'm actually going to be showcasing 2 resumes today. One is my business one, and one is my techified one. All right, so some context. I didn't always have programming experience going into university, yeah, I did not have a single bit of programming experience, but I did have some leadership skills. So let's first talk about my business resume. So very straightforward. You know what? We have our summary of qualifications here, but I called it profile for some reason. It's one column because I think in business, it's like very typical and standard to have things in one column. Something I really like about my resume for business is that there's lots of action words. We have like past tense and, you know, makes you sound really epic, which is pretty good. And also having numbers, quantifying your impact is really important for showcasing that, you know, you can do things that are meaningful. So I have some numbers here, which I'm like, oh, wow, I really peaked in high school here. So that's really good. But this is overall a very like standard business resume. And I realized, oh, I kind of wanted to do some like maybe QA, maybe software development, some industry relevant jobs that like were relevant to my degree. So I did some like looking through other people's tech resumes, tried to extract some patterns, and I came up with this design. So some differences are, first of all, it's 2 columns. There's lots of colors. There's icons. There's a lot of GitHub mentioned on this resume, and there's a lot more like tech orientation. So this is like my version of techification. So I'm going to go over what I like about this resume and what I don't like about this resume. So first of all, what I really like the colors, you know. This is like one of my favorite colors ever. And so it's nice to have like a colorful resume when you're dealing with tech. Of course, it's not necessary. Some people do their resumes in LaTeX or latex, however you pronounce it. And that's fine too. But, you know, adding some color does create some visual appeal if a recruiter is just screening your resume. The second thing I really like about it are the skills that I mentioned. I feel like, you know, if you list some languages, that kind of showcases that, hey, you could be like really useful in a software development environment. Some other parts that are really good are like projects. Because I didn't have any like programming experience, I took the initiative to like do a bunch of hackathons as well as personal projects, created my own personal website. And yeah, so showcasing those projects is a good way, like even if you don't have any work experience going into your programming job, to show that, hey, I have some like programming skills that I could like showcase some value towards your company. I also really like these GitHub icons. So you can't tell right now because I'm in editing mode, but these GitHub icons have hyperlinks in them. And that's always really good. I heard from a recruiter from a fan company that, you know, when they see links on a resume, they click every single link to make sure like it's valid, that it's legit, because they would rather see the actual project itself than, you know, some words about the project. Let's see what else. Oh, I also talk about some extracurriculars here at the bottom because I didn't have any industry experience. So I wanted to showcase some soft skills that I had. And I also got involved in Wix early on. So having some extracurriculars and leadership or something like somewhat relevant to tech is always like should be included in a resume, or I hope it like was perceived well. They usually notice things that are really relevant towards tech. So I think that's pretty good. All right, now talking about things that I don't like. So first thing, as you can tell, I tiered my skills. So look at this, proficient in and familiar with. I'm very heavily biased against this. I should have never done this. And a lot of recruiters also don't like it when people do this because it just shows that you like suck at certain skills, right? You either know something or you don't. So try to avoid this pattern of showcasing that, hey, I'm really proficient in something and I kind of suck at something. So avoid that. The second thing I wish I did was focus on 3 to 4 projects as opposed to just like list 6 things really briefly. I think I should have like just talked about 3 or 4 projects that showcase my technical skills that I knew extremely well. I didn't know every project super well in terms of the technical side. Like for example, if it was like a hackathon project where like I built the HTML, I don't know anything about like the JavaScript for the Chrome extension, which is like the meat of the project. So I shouldn't have included something that I didn't contribute too much technically, if that makes sense. So focusing on 3 or 4 projects is always good. And then knowing your projects really well is really important because if you list a project on your resume, it's likely that a recruiter or interviewer will ask you about your projects and tell you to explain it in detail. So making sure that, you know, you're not too vague and that you don't like include things that you just don't really understand the technical side is like, you should avoid that. Finally, I really hate my font. This font is too round. That's just my personal preference. It's a huge nit. But yeah, so that's a little bit of information about my 2 resumes. Happy to take any questions.
Awesome. So we have one question from A Zhang. They're asking, why is the background not avocado?
I can't tell. Is this my background as in my Zoom background or
Yeah, I think
my
I think your Zoom
resume background? Because I don't think you should include avocados in your resume background unless you want to be like an avocado farmer. In that case, totally pursue it. Follow your dreams. This is an okra because the company I'm working at right now, which is Cockroach Labs, they have something called OKRs, which is like objectives, key results, plus action items. So I have okras. And I also think it makes my skin look very nice. So that's why.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Monica.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, so next up, we have the last one and only Nick. He's a 3BCS and stats student, and his interests lie mostly in data science and research, and also Sweet. He wanted us to know that he wastes way too much time on Twitter and YouTube, so he's glad to join us today to reduce his screen time there. If you have any cool food or music suggestions, please send them his way. The floor is yours, Nick.
Thanks, Gordon. Hey, everyone. I'm Nick. I'm a comp science stats student. Today I'll be talking about my first year resume, kind of just to preface the screen share. I was fortunate to have some experience before first year, and so you'll kind of see that. But unfortunately, I wasn't blessed with good taste, and so we'll kind of roast how that goes there. So let me share my screen. Cool. And yes, I'm using Microsoft Edge to view this PDF because they have great drawing features. So I hope that doesn't discredit me at all. Edge is really great. So this was my first year resume. You'll see that it's very crowded, has way too many words and way too many columns. And so I'll kind of break down what I like about it and what I don't like about it. So immediately, the first thing is I'm not a big fan of 2-column resumes in general. They don't parse very well. They tend to have too much content. And usually when I see people's 2-column resumes, like this column here just has a lot of filler content that's not very helpful. You can kind of see that here as well. And maybe I'll break that down a little bit more once we get to it. I guess we'll start with experience. Oh, am I zooming here? Nice. So here's my experience. One thing you'll notice is I did have one kind of internship. And one thing that I like about my resume is that I do have some metrics here. So I guess my advice for when you do start an internship is you should be able to kind of write your bullet points without any numbers kind of early on in your internship. You kind of understand what impact you're aiming to make and why you're doing the project that you're doing. And so if you don't understand that, make sure you talk to your manager and kind of understand the impact of your role. And then so you can literally kind of write the point without the numbers. And then when you complete your project, ideally you've like accomplished that goal. And so that's a useful way to have numbers for what you're working on. I think one issue here is like, this is like really unfocused. I have kind of experiences ranging all over the place. If I was interested in working into software development role, like for example, I like having like a research internship is like kind of irrelevant where I was just kind of working on some physics stuff. And so I would exclude that to kind of free up space and open it up a little bit. And, you know, also like 4 bullet points is kind of too much. Even this last one is just kind of, it doesn't really fit in with the rest of my points. And so really having 3 would be a lot more helpful. Kind of moving down. And it's also like visually, it's just really crowded. I just would have spaced things out a little bit more, but I'll keep repeating that as we go. Oh, and another thing is I would, in general, in my current resume, I like to bold the technologies that I use. And so, for example, even though MATLAB is like irrelevant, perhaps I would have like bolded this. And so that's something I would have changed. Looking at my projects, these are all very like shallow surface level projects that were either done at hackathons or like kind of rushed put together to try to beef up my resume for co-op apps. And so there's not much detail in these, and that's something I definitely would have changed, like maybe working on fewer projects with more detail, which would have been more helpful for my job hunt. And you know, one thing I like is I do include the technologies here, which is helpful for people to see what's going on. But if you look at these points, they're kind of poorly put together in the sense that sometimes I don't use keywords correctly. Sometimes I I kind of lead with the technical jargon instead of kind of describing the impact of the project. I think that's a lot more motivating when you read a project to see, okay, the accomplishment was this, or the goal was this, and then I accomplished it using these techniques. And that's kind of the formula I use nowadays. Whereas here, I just kind of throw in these buzzwords and implemented machine learning. Like it's just a buzzword, right? It doesn't make any sense, but that's what I have here. And that's something that I would definitely change. If you see at the bottom, I have some organization stuff, and this isn't really necessary. This is just adding more words to my resume. If I thought if I thought these roles are relevant, I should have expanded them in experience and talked about why they were relevant. But instead, I just have them here as bullet points, and that just adds more words without adding any value. Looking at the skill section, I think even if you have very limited experience, I think you should still tailor your resume to the roles you're applying for. And one easy way to do that is to change the skills that you portray depending on the role you're applying for. So for example, if you're applying for a development role, it doesn't make sense to have like these random machine learning libraries or whatever it may be. And vice versa. If you're applying for like a data science ML role, perhaps you don't want to have a bunch of web dev stuff that you may have done. And so just filtering those is like a really easy way to have differentiation between your resumes, which I would recommend. Yeah, these achievements, I can't even even looking at my screen now, I don't even want to read these. And yeah, high school, you really don't need that here. And coursework, I generally don't advise putting coursework. Maybe in first year, they might add some value to your resume if you don't have much other experience, like these online courses. But I would just recommend instead, showing these skills to the projects that you do. And so, showing that you have C++ skills using some project in C++, et cetera, et cetera. I can briefly, yep. And so that's kind of my main, all these links are clickable, I promise, but they don't look that way because of Microsoft Edge. But yeah, make sure everything is clickable. And I can show you my kind of current resume in like an overview. And so this is kind of what I use now, and this is the format I use now. You don't need to read anything, but it's just know that it's one column, it's a lot more white space, it breathes a little bit more, things are a little bit more concise, and kind of that's how I lay things out. So that was just a quick format thing. And that is all from me. Happy to take questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. So we have one question from Yeet122333. How would you recommend for a beginner to get started with these ML/data projects?
That is a really good question. And maybe I won't spend too much time here, but I can maybe link something to the attendees, or I wrote a blog post about this. I don't want to plug my own website on this stream, but I can link that later. So yeah, maybe I can link that at the end.
Cool, awesome. And one more question from Potato Turtle 123. How do I be as wise as you, Nicholas?
That's a good question. You got to do a lot of things wrong and then, pretend to be wise. You just got to say things in a vindictive tone and make sure people think you know what you're doing, but really you don't. So that's the trick.
Awesome. Thank you so much to all the speakers and for the roast. We really enjoyed that. And now we'd like to open the floor for a quick Q&A. So if you have any questions, whether in general or directed towards a specific speaker, please drop it in the chat. We'll start off with some questions that we picked up throughout this event. And first, from Curious Tourist, if you could go back to first year, what things would you focus more on? Things like leak code, maybe not even school related, just looking back to first year, because you guys are all seniors, or experienced in your university career. What are some things that you'd like to focus on more? Does anyone want to take this question? Steven.
Yes.
Let's go.
This is a great question, and I think there's no right answer for this. Thank you. I'm done. No. I think first and foremost, you should focus on things that you find exciting. If you're in computer science, hopefully there's something about it that pulled you into it, or there's something keeping you here. And you kind of have to narrow down what that is, or what number of things that may be, and then put your energy into it. And for the most part, it should be enjoyable. It shouldn't be a chore. Apart from, maybe putting in a bit of work to get a polished result out, or a polished project. But yeah, find that spark that's keeping you in CS and really chase it.
Does anyone have anything else to add? If not, I will move to the next question.
Oh yeah, sure. maybe, I don't know about one thing I would change, but maybe something that worked, because it's like hard to say what I would change, because if I change some one thing, other things may not have worked out. But one thing that really helped for me was just kind of focusing on one project. I know it's like in first year, you're kind of in a rush to like, oh no, I need to get some experience in tons of projects, but like focusing on one thing and doing it slowly and well, like kind of helps you talk about it during interviews and builds up your skills slowly while not making you too stressed out. So I think that's a suggestion, like spend a lot of time on one thing as opposed to a lot of time on a bunch of little things. And also non-co-op related, but academically related. It's kind of understanding how courses work and kind of planning into the future really helped me, even though I basically didn't follow my plan at all. Like the process of planning taught me a lot about how things work, made it a lot easier in upper years. And because now I can relax a little bit more. Whereas if I hadn't, I'm not sure if I could. So yeah.
Awesome. Our next question comes from Sad Sorrow. Would you guys suggest linking to a GitHub repo or a website app if you have it hosted somewhere? Alternatively, like a blog or post write up about a project that you have. I think this question relates to, the tip about adding hyperlinks to your resume. So like if you were to add, hyperlinks, how would you go about doing that, I guess?
I can go, yeah, like huge, yes. If you have like a blog post, that's like even better. And I know people have like dev posts and stuff where they describe projects in detail. Those are super awesome. Maybe the only suggestion I would have is make it obvious that it's a clickable link. So I know a lot of people on this panel had like little GitHub logos. On my current resume, I have like a little link logo, just something obvious so people know to click it. But yeah, 100%.
Yeah, plus one on that. I spoke with a hiring manager at one of my co-ops, and he said that he clicks every link that's on a resume. And your resume sometimes gets shown to interviewers, and interviewers kind of want to do their own research as well. So having those links available for your interviewers is also really good.
Cool, awesome. Next question from Nathan Low 98. Can you put down some leadership experience as well if you don't have work experience?
I'll take this one on. That's kind of what I did. I was really involved in like student government and stuff in high school. So a lot of the points from my resume in first year were from that. Something that I think I would do differently if I could go back to first year was get more involved in 1A or like 1B, because I didn't really do that until like 2B, like 3A-ish. So try to get involved in the UW community and like which will lead to leadership stuff later down the road as soon as.
Awesome. Question for Monica from It's Tan Man. What made you decide to drop BBA? They're wondering the same, if they should do the same right now.
Oh, interesting. Various reasons. Thank you for that question. And also feel free to reach out to me personally afterwards, because I do have like some Google Doc article written up somewhere that I just can't pull out right now. But the main reason was I felt like a business education, like I got a better understanding of business skills from doing hands-on work like extracurriculars, like managing teams. The only way to get good at managing teams isn't really to take organizational behavior courses per se, but to apply that knowledge from online, which there are so many business resources out there on the job, and like, yeah, applying those skills. That's the first thing. And like a lot of what you learn in business class is kind of already available online. Secondly, I didn't really vibe with the culture as much. I had some econ transfer credits from high school, so I was only taking BU 111 and 121. And yeah, I don't know. I just felt really detached from the double degree community because of that. Trying to think. Third of all, Laurier is also really far. And I'm always in Waterloo during the winter, and I'm just like not down to walk to Laurier because I go to all my classes. Like I'm not one of those people who don't go to classes and whatnot. And so, it was just, I did not want to trek through the cold. But that being said, the stuff you learn in like Laurier business is actually like very much what having a business job is like. Like if you'll learn about like the 4 P's of marketing, if you're learning about analyzing customer gains and pains, that's exactly what stuff like when I was doing my PM role, like exercises that I would do on a day-to-day basis. So not to dismiss a business education, it's just what you want to use your credits for.
Awesome, great question. Another question that's general. What is your advice? It's from I Love Operating Systems. What is your advice if you're trying to, you know, bolster up your points, but you don't really have any solid numbers or statistics for any of the points. Do you guys have any recommendations on how to, I guess, phrase your points that way? I see that Nick would like to answer that.
Oh, yeah, sure. I thought we were doing the emoji thing. Yeah, I guess it's if you have a problem that you were trying to solve, just explicitly state that you did solve that problem. And I think that's a good substitute for a metric. So for example, sorry, I'm blanking. I can't think of any examples, but explicitly stating your impact, even if it doesn't have numbers, is like a good way to replace the percentages and numbers. And I know a lot of people say they don't really know what impact they had, but ideally you were doing some work to benefit something, and you should really identify that something. And maybe if you can identify that something, like that's something you should talk about with your manager early on. And so that's my kind of generic, maybe not so useful advice.
I will also add that you can try to come with your best guess, which sounds minor like cheating, but like if you can think of any way to phrase it around a number, like when you rephrase it, like there's some number involved, like that's better than no number. Yeah.
Okay, next question from Curious Tourist, Nick. They have some trouble describing the things that they've accomplished during research internships. So they find it's difficult to explain it to recruiters using technical jargon. So do you have any recommendation on how to, you know, express their experience in terms that recruiters and other people that read their resume would understand?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that's like tough for research, where it's all another tough part about research is that like most of the time ideas don't succeed, and sometimes you can go an entire term where your thing doesn't work, and that's like the nature of research. This is still something I'm trying to figure out, I guess, but one thing that works well for me is kind of, again, like even going back to the original like business problem of the research goal, right? So if you're, let's say you're working on, I don't know, developing some new algorithm to do something, right? Let's say you're developing like a more efficient machine learning algorithm to do something. I think phrasing it in that way, stating that your research is in developing more efficient algorithm, which can be used to do yada, 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 is like a good way to catch a recruiter's eye. But there's also some disparity there because you're kind of selling the business objective of your research problem, but then the research hiring manager who will read that probably won't care about that as much as the technical jargon. So I think, yeah, maybe I don't have a good answer to this, but including both elements of like the motivation of your research problem as well as the technical part of your research problem to satisfy both recruiters and hiring managers. It's tough, but I hope some of the words I said are helpful.
Awesome, thank you so much. Second last question, so we'll do one question after this. This one is from Carbon Proton. They'd like to know, or they noticed that education is usually pretty low down on the resumes that, you know, we've seen tonight. And so does that imply that, for example, like a math student would be able to get, you know, a similar career in CS as a CS student / undergrad? Or like, is there another explanation as to why education seems to not be prioritized in these resumes? Nick again, all right.
Okay. To answer the first question, yes. I think I know a lot of my peers who are not in computer science who are like doing great roles in software engineering. It may be more tough because a lot of roles like maybe have some artificial requirements and recruiters look for like the CS degree, but in general, experience will trump your education. And I think for a lot of our resumes, once you have a little bit of experience, that's like a lot more important than your education, especially because, you know, when you are applying as a university student, there's like a standard kind of set of things that university students learned in some sense, whereas your experience is what makes you unique. And so I think that's why people prioritize experience over education for sure, but still, you know, have it on there somewhere. I hope someone will add to what I said, because I don't know if it's 100% true.
I will also add that if you are in the co-op program at Waterloo, they have your transcript. So they'll have like the courses that you're currently taking. They'll have all the courses you've ever taken, and they'll know that you go to Waterloo. So really, it doesn't matter if you put Waterloo at the top. You shouldn't actually. You should put it at the bottom if you're in co-op. However, if you're not in co-op and you're applying externally, you might want to put it at the top, because Waterloo is actually very well renowned in the tech community. So if you're looking for tech jobs, yeah, own up to your school. Be proud of it.
Awesome. And as a last question, this one comes from Lena. What did you use to create your resume? Just like, you know, tools or softwares that you guys found helpful in using. Steven. and Selena.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. Hopefully we can all kind of chime in on this. I used HTML and CSS. If you want to get into web dev, you got to learn it anyway, and this is a great exercise to do so.
I actually tried a couple different programs. So I don't know if you guys know, but there's this design program called Figma, and it's like a design program. You're able to export things in PDFs, and I used that for a couple of years, but then there's this like little test I do to make sure that like my resume is parsable. So basically, like you open up your PDF, and then like Command A, and then copy paste that onto like a blank Word doc or like anywhere, like text document or whatever. And I noticed that whenever I exported my resume in Figma, it wasn't really like parsing properly, or like all the words would be like stuck together and stuff. So I thought it wouldn't parse properly. So this term I decided to redo it all in Word. And I found that like it copies and pastes a lot better if I use Word and then export it into PDF.
I just want to emphasize that like I use Canva and it's had the same problem. Like you will basically get rejected from any job that uses automated parser for keywords if you are using Figma or Canva or any other tool. Stick with Pages, stick with Word, or make your HTML document.
Okay, so that concludes our final Q&A. Thank you everyone in the chat for asking questions, and thank you to our roasters or speakers for giving such great answers. So yeah, thank you to everyone that made it out tonight. Huge shout out to all the viewers that attended our event, and another huge thank you to all the speakers for taking time out of your night to join us. We'll conclude this event by sharing a link to a Google Docs with lots of helpful information and other links, so please check it out. This event's also been recorded, and we'll publish it onto YouTube as soon as possible onto our channel. So you can find it. You can find a link to our YouTube in the Twitch About section, and also it should be in the info doc. And also make sure to follow all our socials. The handles are visible on screen, or they should be soon, and are in the information doc as well. And lastly, we've got a feedback form that would be amazing if you could fill out. It really helps us gauge what went well and what we can improve on, as well as your interest in future events. So yeah, thank you everyone. Just hold up, we're gonna get this slide on. Yeah, here we go, yeah. Everyone follow our socials if you can, and check out the info doc, yeah. There it is. Yeah. Thank you guys so much. And that will conclude our event.
Woo! Thanks for hosting, Gordon.
Well,
Thanks, Gordon.
Thanks, Gordon.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Have a good night, everyone.